Did you know that Egypt, that ribbon of life in the middle of the desert, was once the most powerful empire of the ancient world? That beneath its dunes still lie temples, mummies, and treasures that modern science has yet to uncover, and that its river, the Nile, not only allowed an eternal civilization to flourish, but still sets the rhythm of an entire nation today? Egypt is not just pyramids and pharaohs. It is myth, it is desert, and it is life reborn between sand and water. Get ready, because today you'll discover 50 incredible facts about Egypt that will completely change the way you see the cradle of civilization. 50. Egypt has two seas with completely different colors and ecosystems. Egypt is one of the few countries in the world bordered by two very different seas, the Mediterranean to the north and the Red Sea to the east. The Mediterranean coast features cooler waters, sandy beaches, and has historically connected Egypt to Europe and North Africa through cities like Alexandria. The Red Sea, by contrast, is warm, highly saline, and famous for its crystal clear waters and coral reefs. This sharp contrast gives Egypt two completely distinct marine environments, making its coastline unusually diverse both visually and ecologically. 49. The Nile Delta is one of the most fertile regions on Earth. The Nile Delta, where the river spreads out before reaching the Mediterranean, is one of the most fertile agricultural regions on the planet. Although Egypt is mostly desert, this flat triangular area has supported dense populations for over 7,000 years thanks to nutrient-rich silt deposited by ancient floods. Today, the delta remains Egypt's agricultural core, but its low elevation also makes it highly vulnerable to sea level rise and environmental change. 48. The White Desert looks like an alien landscape. The White Desert in Egypt's Western Desert is known for its surreal chalk rock formations shaped by wind erosion over millions of years. These white structures resemble mushrooms, animals, and abstract shapes, creating a landscape that feels almost extraterrestrial. The region was once covered by an ancient sea, which explains the presence of marine fossils and highlights how dramatically Egypt's geography has transformed over time. 47. Egypt is linked to the Great Rift Valley. Egypt is geologically connected to the Great Rift Valley, one of the largest tectonic systems on Earth. The Red Sea itself was formed as the African and Arabian plates slowly pulled apart, a process that continues today. This tectonic activity shaped Egypt's eastern mountains and coastline, reminding us that the country's geography is not static but still evolving on a geological timescale. 46. The Sinai Peninsula is part of Asia. Although Egypt is usually associated with Africa, the Sinai Peninsula is geographically part of Asia, making Egypt a transcontinental country. Separated from mainland Egypt by the Gulf of Suez and the Suez Canal, Sinai features rugged mountains and deep valleys unlike the Nile Valley. Home to Mount Catherine, Egypt's highest peak, Sinai has long served as a crossroads between continents, cultures, and trade routes. Before continuing, be sure to subscribe and leave a like to become an expert on the geography of our world. 45. The Suez Canal reshaped global geography. The Suez Canal is a man-made waterway that permanently changed global trade by connecting the Mediterranean and Red Seas. Opened in 1869, it eliminated the need for ships to sail around Africa, dramatically shortening routes between Europe and Asia. Beyond commerce, the canal also became a geographic boundary between Africa and Asia and altered marine ecosystems by allowing species to migrate between seas. 44. Egypt's desert oases are sustained by underground water. Hidden within Egypt's western desert are major oases such as Siwa, Bahariya, and Dakhla, made possible by underground aquifers beneath the sand. These water sources create isolated pockets of vegetation, agriculture, and permanent settlement surrounded by desert. For thousands of years, oases served as vital stopovers for trade routes across the Sahara and remain geographically and culturally distinct regions today. 43. Lake Nasser is one of the world's largest artificial lakes. Lake Nasser was created by the construction of the Aswan High Dam and stretches over 500 kilometers along Egypt's southern border. It plays a critical role in irrigation, flood control, and electricity generation, fundamentally reshaping southern Egypt's geography. Its creation also forced the relocation of ancient monuments like Abu Simbel, demonstrating how human engineering can permanently alter natural landscapes. 42. The Eastern Desert is ancient and mineral rich. Egypt's eastern desert, stretching between the Nile and the Red Sea, is dominated by rugged mountains and rocky plateaus. It contains some of the oldest exposed rocks on Earth and is rich in minerals such as gold and copper. Ancient Egyptians mined this region extensively, and despite its harsh conditions and sparse population, its geological importance has been recognized for millennia. 41. Egypt's coastline is longer than it appears. When both the Mediterranean and Red Sea coasts are combined, Egypt's coastline extends over 3,000 kilometers. These shores have connected Egypt to global trade networks since antiquity, from ancient ports like Alexandria to modern resort cities along the Red Sea. Yet, despite this extensive coastline, most of Egypt's population remains concentrated inland along the Nile, highlighting the dominance of freshwater geography over maritime access. 40. The Nile Valley is a geographical anomaly in the middle of the desert. The Nile Valley is one of the most extreme examples on Earth of how geography can concentrate life into a narrow corridor. In many parts of Egypt, the fertile land along the Nile is no more than a few kilometers wide, with dense green fields ending abruptly at barren desert cliffs and sand. This sharp boundary is not gradual, it is immediate and visible even from satellite imagery. The valley exists because the Nile cuts through ancient rock formations, depositing nutrient-rich silt that made agriculture possible for thousands of years. Without this valley, Egypt would be almost entirely uninhabitable, and its civilization could never have developed in the way it did. 39. Whale fossils exist in one of the driest places on Earth. Wadi al-Hitan, located deep in Egypt's western desert, contains fossilized remains of ancient whales that lived over 40 million years ago. These fossils include fully preserved skeletons with legs, providing crucial evidence of whale evolution from land mammals to marine animals. The presence of these fossils in what is now one of the driest regions on Earth proves that this area was once covered by a warm, shallow sea. The extreme aridity of the desert helped preserve these remains in exceptional condition, making Wadi al-Hitan one of the most important paleontological sites on the planet. 38. The Red Sea's geography creates extreme marine conditions. The Red Sea is one of the warmest and saltiest seas in the world due to its enclosed shape, high evaporation rates, and limited freshwater inflow. Unlike most seas, it receives almost no rivers, which means salt is not diluted. These extreme conditions have forced marine life to adapt in unique ways, resulting in coral reefs that are unusually resilient to heat stress. This makes the Red Sea a critical natural laboratory for scientists studying the future of coral ecosystems in a warming world and a geographically rare marine environment. 37. Egypt's deserts were once full of rivers and lakes. Large portions of Egypt that are now hyper-arid desert were once green landscapes during a period known as the African Humid Period. Rainfall was much higher, allowing rivers, lakes, and grasslands to exist across what is now the Western Desert. Evidence of this wetter climate comes from dried riverbeds, ancient lake basins, and rock art depicting animals like giraffes, crocodiles, and hippos. As the climate gradually dried, human populations were forced to migrate toward the Nile, concentrating settlement and shaping Egypt's long-term geographical and cultural development. 36. Cairo sits where two major landforms collide. Cairo is located at a precise geographical transition point where the narrow Nile Valley opens into the wide Nile Delta. To the south, the river is confined by rocky plateaus, while to the north, it spreads into flat, fertile land ideal for agriculture. This position gave Cairo control over movement between Upper and Lower Egypt, making it a natural political and economic center. Geography, more than chance, explains why Cairo grew into one of the largest cities in Africa and the Middle East. 35. The Great Sand Sea is one of the largest dune systems on Earth. The Great Sand Sea in Egypt's western desert is a massive field of sand dunes stretching for hundreds of kilometers toward the Libyan border. These dunes can exceed 100 meters in height and form complex wave-like patterns shaped by dominant wind systems. Unlike coastal dunes, these sand formations migrate slowly across the landscape over centuries. Their scale and uniformity make the Great Sand Sea one of the most impressive desert landforms on the planet and a defining feature of Egypt's western geography. 34. Egypt's climate changes more than most countries over short distances. Despite appearing uniform on a map, Egypt's climate varies significantly from north to south. Coastal regions along the Mediterranean experience cooler temperatures and occasional rainfall, while southern Egypt near Aswan is among the hottest inhabited places on Earth. This variation affects crop types, architecture, clothing, and daily routines. The change is driven by latitude, proximity to the sea, and desert influence, showing how geography creates sharp environmental contrasts within a single country. 33. Ancient coastlines now lie beneath the Mediterranean. Over thousands of years, changes in sea level and land subsidence have submerged parts of Egypt's ancient Mediterranean coastline. Near Alexandria, underwater archaeology has revealed sunken harbors, temples, and urban structures from ancient civilizations. These submerged landscapes show that Egypt's coastline has never been fixed and that some of its most important historical centers were shaped and later erased by geographical change. The sea itself became a force that rewrote the map. 32. The Fayum Depression is a natural basin that defies Egypt's desert image. The Fayum region is a large natural depression located southwest of Cairo, with parts of it lying below sea level. Its geography allows Nile water to flow into the basin through the Bar Youssef Canal, sustaining agriculture and Lake Karun, one of Egypt's oldest natural lakes. Unlike most desert environments, Fayum has supported continuous human settlement since ancient times. Its existence proves that Egypt's geography includes more complexity than just river and desert. 31. Egypt's geography protected its civilization for millennia. Natural barriers played a major role in Egypt's long-term stability. Vast deserts to the west and east, the Mediterranean Sea to the north, and rugged terrain in Sinai limited large-scale invasions. While Egypt was not completely isolated, these barriers controlled how and where outsiders could enter. This geographical protection allowed Egyptian society to develop steadily over thousands of years, preserving its culture, language, and political systems longer than almost any other ancient civilization. 30. Upper Egypt is actually south of Lower Egypt. One of the most counterintuitive geographical facts about Egypt is that Upper Egypt is located in the south, while Lower Egypt is in the north. This naming has nothing to do with latitude and everything to do with the flow of the Nile River. Since the Nile flows from south to north, areas upstream are considered upper, and downstream regions closer to the Mediterranean are considered lower. This river-based orientation shaped how ancient Egyptians understood their world, organized their administration, and even described political power, proving how geography directly influenced language and perception. 29. The Nile is not a single river, but a complex system. Although often described as one river, the Nile is actually a vast system formed by multiple tributaries, lakes, and wetlands stretching across northeastern Africa. The White Nile originates near Lake Victoria, while the Blue Nile begins in the Ethiopian highlands, where seasonal rains contribute most of the river's water and sediment. By the time the Nile reaches Egypt, it has already traveled thousands of kilometers, carrying nutrients that made Egyptian agriculture possible. Egypt's geography places it at the very end of this system, making the country uniquely dependent on events far beyond its borders. 28. The Ethiopian highlands shape Egypt's geography indirectly. Egypt's landscape and history have been heavily influenced by geography located entirely outside its borders. The Ethiopian highlands, thousands of kilometers to the southeast, are responsible for the annual flooding that once defined life in Egypt. Heavy seasonal rains there fed the Blue Nile, causing floods that deposited fertile silt along the Nile Valley. Even though these highlands are far away, their elevation and climate directly shaped Egypt's agricultural cycles, settlement patterns, and survival for millennia. 27. Egypt has one of the world's largest arid regions. The Western Desert alone covers roughly 2/3 of Egypt's total land area, making it one of the largest continuous arid regions in the world. This vast expanse is part of the Greater Sahara and includes sand seas, rocky plateaus, depressions, and isolated oases. Despite its harsh conditions, the Western Desert has played a critical role in Egypt's geography by acting as a natural barrier, a source of minerals, and a long-term climate archive revealing how environments shift over time. 26. The Eastern Desert was a major ancient trade corridor. Although the Eastern Desert appears inhospitable today, it was once a crucial trade and mining corridor linking the Nile Valley to the Red Sea. Ancient routes cross this desert, connecting river ports with coastal harbors used for trade with Arabia, East Africa, and beyond. The geography of narrow valleys, or wadis, guided movement through the mountains, making the desert navigable despite its harshness. This region shows how even extreme landscapes can become economically vital when geography aligns with human needs. 25. Egypt's mountains are concentrated far from its population centers. Unlike many countries where major cities develop near mountains, Egypt's mountain ranges are largely isolated from its population centers. The highest mountains are found in the Sinai Peninsula and the Eastern Desert, far from the densely populated Nile Valley. This separation is due to water availability rather than elevation. As a result, Egypt's mountainous regions remain sparsely inhabited, preserving landscapes that feel remote despite their proximity to major cities. 24. The Sinai Peninsula acts as a climatic and geographic bridge. Sinai is not just a land bridge between Africa and Asia, it is also a climatic transition zone. Northern Sinai has semi-arid conditions similar to the Mediterranean coast, while southern Sinai features rugged mountains with cooler temperatures and occasional snowfall at high elevations. This diversity within a relatively small area makes Sinai one of Egypt's most geographically complex regions and highlights how elevation and location can dramatically alter climate. 23. Egypt has one of the lowest rainfall levels on Earth. Much of Egypt receives less than 25 millimeters of rainfall per year, placing it among the driest inhabited countries on the planet. In some southern regions, rain may not fall for years at a time. This extreme aridity explains why the Nile is not just important, but absolutely essential. Egypt's geography forces nearly all life, agriculture, and infrastructure to cluster around a single water source, creating one of the most concentrated population distributions on Earth. 22. The Mediterranean Sea moderates northern Egypt's climate. Northern Egypt benefits from the moderating influence of the Mediterranean Sea, which reduces temperature extremes and increases humidity. This maritime effect allows crops and vegetation that would not survive further south. Cities like Alexandria experience a climate closer to southern Europe than to the Sahara, despite being in Africa. This coastal geography created a natural contrast between Egypt's north and south that has existed since ancient times. 21. Egypt's geological layers preserve deep time. Egypt's deserts expose geological layers that span hundreds of millions of years. In many places, erosion has stripped away surface material, revealing ancient rock formations that would normally be buried deep underground. This makes Egypt one of the best locations in the world to study Earth's deep geological history. From ancient seabeds to early continental crust, the country's landscape is a visible timeline of planetary change. 20. The Nile Delta is slowly sinking. The Nile Delta, long considered one of the most productive and stable landscapes in human history, is undergoing a slow but dangerous transformation. In addition to rising Mediterranean sea levels, the delta is gradually sinking due to the natural compaction of its soft sediments and the sharp reduction of silt deposits since the construction of large dams, particularly the Aswan High Dam. For thousands of years, annual floods replenish the delta with fresh layers of sediment, counteracting subsidence and coastal erosion. Today, that natural balance is broken. As the land sinks and the sea advances, saltwater intrudes into freshwater aquifers and agricultural soils, threatening crops, drinking water, and the livelihoods of millions. What was once a geographic symbol of abundance and stability has become one of Egypt's most environmentally fragile regions. 19. Egypt's borders follow natural geographic lines. Unlike many modern states whose borders were drawn arbitrarily, Egypt's boundaries closely follow powerful natural features that have defined the region for millennia. To the west lies the vast Sahara Desert, an enormous natural barrier that historically limited large-scale movement. To the east, the rugged Eastern Desert and the Red Sea form another formidable boundary, while the Mediterranean Sea defines the northern edge. In the south, the Nile's cataracts historically marked the transition into Nubia. These natural borders made Egypt easier to define, defend, and administer long before modern political maps existed. Geography shaped not only Egypt's ancient territorial identity, but also influenced how its modern borders were conceptualized, showing how landscapes continue to guide political decisions across time. 18. The Red Sea coastline is geologically young. Compared to the ancient landscapes of the Nile Valley, the Red Sea coastline is a relatively young and dynamic geological feature. The Red Sea was formed by tectonic rifting as the African and Arabian plates slowly pulled apart, a process that is still ongoing today. This means the coastline is actively evolving, with steep underwater slopes, fault lines, and sudden depth changes appearing close to shore. Coral reefs grow directly along these geological structures, creating dramatic drop-offs and exceptionally clear waters. The youth of this coastline explains why it looks so different from Egypt's Mediterranean shore and why it supports one of the most distinctive marine environments on the planet. 17. Egypt's population is one of the most geographically concentrated on Earth. Few countries exhibit such an extreme concentration of population as Egypt. Over 95% of its people live on less than 5% of its land area, almost entirely along the Nile Valley and Delta. This pattern is not the result of urban planning or historical coincidence, but of geographic necessity. The surrounding deserts are vast, arid, and largely incapable of supporting large-scale agriculture or permanent settlement. As a result, human activity is compressed into narrow strips of fertile land, creating some of the highest population densities in the world. This concentration amplifies challenges related to housing, transportation, and resource management, making geography a constant factor in Egypt's social and economic life. 16. The Nile's course has shifted over time. Although often seen as timeless and unchanging, the Nile has gradually altered its course over thousands of years. Geological and satellite evidence reveals abandoned river channels, buried floodplains, and ancient riverbanks far from the modern river. These shifts occurred due to sediment buildup, tectonic movements, and changes in flow patterns. Entire cities and agricultural zones rose or declined depending on how close they were to the active river. This slow movement of the Nile demonstrates that even the most stable-looking geographic features can reshape human settlement over long time scales, quietly rewriting the map without sudden disasters. 15. Egypt has natural stone that shaped its architecture. Egypt's architectural legacy is inseparable from its geology. The country is rich in limestone, sandstone, and granite, each located in specific regions and each used for different purposes. Soft limestone from the Nile Valley allowed for precise carving and was used to build pyramids, temples, and tombs. Sandstone, common in Upper Egypt, became the primary material for massive temple complexes, while hard granite from Aswan was reserved for obelisks, statues, and sarcophagi due to its durability. The availability, transport routes, and physical properties of these stones directly influenced Egyptian engineering, aesthetics, and symbolic architecture. 14. Aswan marks a major geographic turning point. Aswan sits near the first cataract of the Nile, where smooth river flow is disrupted by granite outcrops and shallow rapids. This natural break in navigation made Aswan a strategic boundary point for thousands of years. Boats traveling north or south often had to stop here, turning the city into a hub for trade, taxation, and cultural exchange. Geographically, it marked Egypt's southern frontier and the transition toward Nubia and sub-Saharan Africa. Control of Aswan meant control over movement, resources, and contact with regions further south, giving it lasting strategic importance. 13. Egypt's deserts preserve history better than most places. The extreme dryness of Egypt's deserts has created one of the best natural preservation environments on Earth. In the absence of moisture, organic materials such as wood, textiles, papyrus, and even human remains can survive for thousands of years. Structures erode slowly, and footprints can remain visible long after they were made. This preservation is not accidental but geographic. Unlike wetter climates where decay is rapid and relentless, Egypt's arid conditions act as a natural archive, allowing modern researchers to access an unusually complete record of ancient life. 12. The Red Sea Mountains block moisture from reaching the Nile. Mountain ranges running parallel to the Red Sea play a crucial role in Egypt's climate. These mountains intercept moist air coming from the sea, forcing it to rise and lose its moisture before it can reach the Nile Valley. By the time the air passes inland, it is dry, producing a strong rain shadow effect. This explains why rainfall along the Nile is extremely rare despite proximity to a major sea. Geography ensures that even coastal moisture contributes little to Egypt's interior, reinforcing the country's dependence on the Nile rather than rain. 11. Egypt's geography forces cooperation with nature. Egypt's physical environment leaves little room for error. With minimal rainfall, limited arable land, and a single dominant river, survival has always depended on careful coordination with natural cycles. Flood prediction, water distribution, storage, and land management became essential skills rather than optional advantages. This geographic pressure encouraged centralized planning, shared infrastructure, and long-term thinking. Over millennia, Egyptians learned not to dominate their environment, but to cooperate with it, creating systems that balanced human needs with geographic reality. This relationship shaped Egypt's political organization, technological innovation, and remarkable historical continuity. Before moving on to the top 10, remember to join the geography family by subscribing to the channel and leaving your like. 10. Egypt exists because of a single linear water source. Egypt is one of the clearest examples on Earth of a civilization built almost entirely around a single geographical feature, the Nile River. Unlike regions with multiple rivers, lakes, or consistent rainfall, Egypt depends almost exclusively on one linear water source that cuts through otherwise uninhabitable desert. This has forced settlement, agriculture, transportation, and political control into a narrow, elongated shape that mirrors the river itself. The Nile did not just provide water, it created predictable cycles, defined borders between communities, and dictated where cities could exist. Even today, modern highways, railways, and urban expansion closely follow the river's path, showing that Egypt's geography continues to impose the same constraints it did thousands of years ago. 9. The Nile Delta was once larger than it is today. The Nile Delta has not always had its current shape or size. For thousands of years, annual floods deposited massive amounts of sediment, slowly pushing the delta outward into the Mediterranean Sea. However, modern dams, especially the Aswan High Dam, drastically reduced this sediment flow. As a result, the delta is no longer expanding and is instead shrinking in some areas due to erosion and rising sea levels. This geographic shift has profound consequences, including the loss of farmland, increased salinity in soils, and greater vulnerability to flooding. The delta's changing shape is a reminder that even ancient, seemingly permanent landscapes can be altered by human intervention. 8. Egypt sits at the intersection of three continents' influence. While Egypt is physically located in Africa, its geography places it at the crossroads of Africa, Asia, and Europe. The Mediterranean Sea connects it directly to southern Europe, the Sinai Peninsula links it to Asia, and the Nile ties it deep into the African interior. This unique position influenced climate, trade routes, migration patterns, and even species movement. Over thousands of years, Egypt absorbed plants, animals, technologies, and ideas from all three regions, not because of politics, but because geography made interaction inevitable. Few countries in the world occupy such a strategically interconnected physical position. 7. Egypt's landscape channels movement in predictable ways. Egypt's deserts are not empty barriers, they actively shape how people and goods move. The western and eastern deserts restrict east-west travel, funneling movement north-south along the Nile. Mountain ranges, sand seas, and rocky plateaus create natural corridors and choke points that have been used repeatedly throughout history. Ancient trade routes, military campaigns, and modern infrastructure all follow these same geographic pathways. This channeling effect means that Egypt's geography does not just limit movement, it organizes it, creating predictable patterns that repeat across centuries. 6. The Sahara is not static, and Egypt records its changes. Egypt lies on the eastern edge of the Sahara, the largest hot desert on Earth, but this desert has not always been dry. Geological and archaeological evidence within Egypt shows repeated cycles of desert expansion and contraction driven by long-term climate changes. Ancient lake beds, pollen records, and stone tools reveal periods when the desert retreated and human populations spread across what is now empty land. As conditions dried, people were forced back toward the Nile. Egypt's geography acts as a natural archive of Sahara climate history, preserving evidence of dramatic environmental shifts that occurred long before recorded history. 5. The Nile flows against the desert's logic. Most major rivers flow from wet regions into drier ones, But the Nile is unusual because it flows from the rain-rich equatorial and highland regions of Africa into one of the driest deserts on Earth. This geographic contradiction is the reason Egypt exists at all. The river brings water, sediment, and nutrients from climates completely unlike Egypt's own. Without this upstream geography, Egypt would be indistinguishable from surrounding desert regions. The Nile's direction and source make Egypt a downstream beneficiary of distant ecosystems, tying its survival to landscapes thousands of kilometers away. 4. Egypt's geography created one of the world's earliest centralized states. Because Egypt's habitable land is narrow and linear, controlling the Nile meant controlling the country. Unlike regions with scattered fertile zones, Egypt's geography made political unification not only possible but efficient. A single authority could manage irrigation, taxation, and defense along the river corridor. This geographic simplicity allowed Egypt to become one of the world's first centralized states, maintaining continuity for millennia. Geography reduced fragmentation and encouraged long-term stability, something few ancient civilizations achieved. 3. Natural boundaries gave Egypt a clear geographic identity. Egypt's deserts, seas, and cataracts formed natural borders that were easy to recognize and defend. To the west lay the vast Sahara, to the east the rugged eastern desert and Red Sea, to the north the Mediterranean, and to the south the Nile's cataracts. These boundaries helped define what Egypt was and what it was not long before modern maps existed. Geography gave Egypt a strong territorial identity, reinforcing cultural unity and limiting external pressure. This clarity is rare among ancient civilizations and played a major role in Egypt's longevity. 2. Egypt is one of the best places on Earth to see geography shape civilization. Few countries demonstrate the relationship between geography and civilization as clearly as Egypt. The alignment of cities along the Nile, the concentration of population, the reliance on seasonal cycles, and the defensive advantages provided by deserts all point to geography as the dominant force behind Egypt's development. Unlike regions where politics or warfare drove expansion, Egypt's growth followed environmental logic. Its civilization did not fight geography, it adapted to it with precision. This makes Egypt a textbook example for understanding how landscapes shape human history. 1. Without its geography, Egypt would not exist. At its core, Egypt is a geographic miracle. Remove the Nile, and the country becomes an extension of the Sahara with no capacity to support large-scale civilization. Change the surrounding deserts or the river's source, and Egypt's history disappears entirely. Every major aspect of Egyptian life, settlement, agriculture, religion, architecture, politics, can be traced back to geography. Egypt is not just influenced by its landscape, it is defined by it. More than almost any other nation, Egypt is the direct product of where it is on the planet. After learning these 50 facts about Egypt, tell us, which one did you like best or which one surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. Let's see how many of us chose the same fact. And if you think we've forgotten something or want to add your own interesting tidbit, we'd love to hear it. Your feedback helps us improve each video. Also, if you noticed any pronunciation mistakes, thank you for your patience. We strive to improve with every video. And speaking of videos, there's another one playing right now, so you can continue exploring the geography of our beautiful world. But before you go, don't forget to subscribe and like so we can keep learning together. See you in the next one.